I thought that we were above this as an equestrian community, but apparently I was wrong. Looks like we need to talk about three-legged horses. So the topic of whether or not a horse can survive and thrive with only three legs has become a lot more discussed recently over on TikTok because we've been seeing an influx of foals that are born with three legs that people are deciding to keep alive. And I know some people have been asking, oh my god, like I never used to see this before, like is this becoming more common that they're born with three legs? No, it's not becoming more common that horses are born with three legs, it's just becoming more common that people are making the mistake to force them to live in that condition. 20 years ago, if a horse was born with three legs, it would be euthanized on the spot. Is it right to euthanize them on the spot? You can debate, but is it right to keep them alive with only three legs? In my opinion, no. This is something that people are debating a lot, and I think that we need to talk about what it means for a horse to try and live with three legs, because in my opinion, it is not ethical to keep a horse alive if they only have three legs, even if they have a prosthetic. Now, before I get into everything, I do need to preface this all by saying I am not a veterinarian, I am not a vet tech, I am not a farrier, I'm an equine science student, so my opinion is based off of my continuing education, the cases that I have seen online, the cases I've read about, and things that I have had other professionals say to me. Now, most people have heard the idea of horse breaks a leg, you shoot it. And it is very common for horses to get put down if they break a leg. It's less common now depending on the fracture, because some fractures we can, set and the horse has the chance of healing and having a good prognosis. But a lot of breaks, depending on how bad they are, we do choose to euthanize. And the reason that we choose to do that is because the horse would not be able to recover and actually allow the break to heal. And if a horse does not have if a horse does not have four good legs, they really can't live a very good life. Horses need four functioning legs. A horse's best defense in most situations is to run away. They need to have that ability to run away to defend themselves. They also need to have the ability to run and play with other horses and just move, because a horse's health relies on its ability to move. So one of the horses that has started this whole discussion is the foal Rocky, who was born with only three legs, and I believe a rescue took him in, and they've been posting about him, and they said that they took him in knowing that he was a hospice case. In my opinion, horses should not be hospice cases. If a horse gets to the point where they are a hospice case, they no longer have a good quality of life, which means it's time to let them go. Now, we have seen Rocky grow up a bit. He was born a few months ago. He's still here as far as I'm aware, although they haven't posted about him recently. A foal may be able to live on three legs for a certain period of time, but as they start getting bigger, it's going to become more and more of a problem, because balancing weight is a huge issue. Horses need four legs to balance their weight properly, particularly in these scenarios where we're seeing most of these foals that we're seeing and horses that we're seeing that have only three legs, they're missing a front leg, which in my opinion is worse than missing a back leg, because horses do not distribute their weight evenly between all 4 feet. Some people think that. It's not true. A horse carries 60 to sometimes even 70% of their body weight on their front legs. Okay, that's to compensate for the weight of the head and the neck. As soon as you take out one of those front legs, that is 60 to sometimes 70% of the body weight going onto one leg. And a horse's leg and foot is not designed the same way that the leg of a cat or a dog is designed, okay? In the foot of a dog or a cat, you have multiple bones that are sharing the load, right? The horse's foot evolved differently, okay? It is a single digit. Their hoof is their middle fingernail. Sorry, I don't actually mean to flip you off. It's essentially their middle fingernail. Their fetlock is this joint in your finger. They have evolved to walk on single digits, which evolutionarily is seriously questionable. Like, it's one of the ways in which horses are just not designed well. So are they strong? Yes. But their legs are also incredibly fragile. That all of that weight is going down onto ultimately one bone in the bottom of the foot. All of that weight into one leg is going to start causing a lot of problems. That horse is going to be at a seriously increased risk of pressure-induced laminitis. Laminitis can be caused by a lot of different things, as all of us equestrians know. One of those things can be excess pressure. It's not uncommon for a horse that has an injury on one side to then get laminitis on the other side from standing too much, because essentially laminitis is inflammation of the laminae, and that can happen from putting too much pressure on one foot. So that horse is going to be at seriously increased risk of laminitis. A horse on 3 legs, you've got seriously increased risk of lameness, tendon and ligament injuries. You're looking at the risk of joint collapse, increased risk of injury and fractures because that horse can't move properly. They're going to be out and about doing stuff. One misstep and you're done. You've got increased risk of early development of arthritis. You've got a guarantee for musculoskeletal pain because the horse is not going to be able to distribute their weight properly. They're not standing properly. They're not moving properly. I've seen photos of horses that are missing a back leg specifically, and their pelvis is so horribly shifted, particularly if you don't give them a prosthetic. Like, I saw this one mini horse who's missing a back leg, and his pelvis is so horribly twisted that because he's only got that one leg, he's compensating, and he's got spinal curvature. Like, that spine is so messed up. That's not fair to the horse. In that leg that's holding, excess weight, you've got increased risk of navicular damage. I would have to assume that you've got increased risk of the pedal bone collapsing if there's so much weight on there. That's me speculating. I would assume you've got increased risk of a dropped fetlock as well. I mean, we've actually seen it in photos of this foal Rocky. You can see that his bone structure, like that fetlock, is not sitting where it should be. It also actually appears that his front leg has stopped growing. Like, foals are bum high. They're not this bum high. It looks like his leg has stopped growing, and I honestly, that's not all that crazy because of all of that excess weight that's on the leg. It does not have the opportunity to grow properly. Another issue you're going to deal with is circulation issues, and because the hooves, I always just say feet because I never know if people, like, some people say hoof, some people say hoof, some people say hooves, some people say hooves, so I just say feet. This is actually kind of funny because when I am describing a singular foot, I say hoof, but when I am describing multiple feet, I want to say hooves because hooves sounds weird to me. Hooves sounds better, but hoof is harder to say than hoof. So I'm like, I want to say hoof and hooves, but hoof and hooves, I don't know, man, I don't know. The feet are required for proper circulation. The digital cushion, the veins, the arteries, all of the structures of the hoof act as a hydraulic pump. So the heart pumps blood out throughout the body and down into all of the legs, and the horse literally walking on their hoof, and the structures of the hoof work as a pump to get the blood back up to the heart. So yes, if you're missing a leg, blood's not getting down to that leg, but it also just means that part of the circulatory system is not there. And you also have to take into account the potential for the emotional distress that is going to be caused for a prey animal that is no longer able to properly run away. I saw someone who was reacting to a video of a paint foal who was trying to run on 3 legs, and apparently in the video they were saying they're not, not the reaction video, but the original video, they said they weren't going to put the horse down because he's got a good quality of life. And I'm watching that horse run, and I'm like, that is not a good quality of life. A horse that cannot run properly is a horse that does not have a good quality of life. Okay? Point blank, period. Point blank, period. I know that a lot of people have brought up the possibility of prosthetics or wheelchairs. Number one, wheelchairs, no. A horse cannot live in a wheelchair. Sorry, I know I've had a few people who have said that sometimes when I make videos like this, I can sound a little bit condescending. That's not how I mean to come across. I just get kind of passionate, and I think sometimes I can come across kind of rude. That's never how I intend to portray myself, so I apologize for that. But I do find that sometimes you have to be a little bit abrasive to be clear that horses cannot live in a wheelchair. Can they survive? Maybe for a bit. Can they live a good quality of life? Can they thrive in a wheelchair? No. There are dogs and cats that can live good lives in wheelchairs, or I guess I don't actually know about cats, but I know about dogs. There are dogs who they go for walks, they run around, they play in a wheelchair, and they're fine. And that's great. Horses are not dogs. We need to stop, I'll hear people saying things like, oh, it's a double standard. It's not a double standard. It's 2 completely different species that have different needs. Their biology is different. Their anatomy is different, and we have to treat them as such. Treating them as if they're the same and as if the same thing is going to work for both species is not helpful. It is counterproductive, and it is to the detriment of the animals. I didn't know if people had ever tried to put horses in wheelchairs, but I did find a photo on Instagram or a video on Instagram of one that they put a miniature horse or a Shetland, I can't remember exactly, it was a very small pony, into a wheelchair, and you could just tell the horse was miserable. A horse can't live a good life in a wheelchair. They can't lie down on their own. They can't get back up on their own. That's not fair to them. A horse in a wheelchair can never be safely turned out with other horses. You run the risk of another horse getting their leg stuck in the wheelchair. You run the risk of the horse in the wheelchair getting a leg stuck in the wheelchair, like one of the legs they do have, right? They can't properly play with other horses. If they get into a fight with another horse, there is serious risk for injury, and the horse in the wheelchair is at a serious disadvantage. That horse can't go out in the snow because they'll get stuck. They can't go out in the mud because they'll get stuck. They can't run around and play. They can't lie down to sleep. Like, they can't do anything on their own, and that's not fair to them. So no, wheelchair is a big no-no, not an option. Prosthetics, that's a bit of a more touchy topic because 10 years ago, I maybe had only ever heard of like 2 people who had tried it, and it was like these really janky prosthetics. Like, the horse was obviously miserable and it looked like a mess, and I really, really hated it. Now, prosthetics for horses are becoming more common, and there are some vets who are specializing in it, which, like, I find to be a bit of like an iffy thing. I was doing a little bit of Googling just because I was curious about it, and I did find one vet in Yellowstone who it seems to be like his thing is he does prosthetics, and I was looking at some of the videos of the horses that he had on there with prosthetics that like he'd fitted to these horses, and like they can move, but they can't move properly. And that may be fine for short term, but a horse's body moving improperly long term is going to cause structural damage, just like in a person, right? Sorry, I'm just realizing that my mic is very close to my mouth and I think it's actually too loud. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit. But yeah, like, none of those horses with prosthetics on are moving properly. Some of them are moving better than others. And I think, like, there is also the question of how much of the leg is missing, right? Like, are they missing from the carpal joint and below? Are they missing from all the way up to the shoulder? And I think that would affect the fit, and that also probably affects like some of like how the horse can move and all of that. And I see these horses with prosthetics on. I'm sorry, I have my retainer and my Invisalign in, so like I have a bit of a lisp right now. I see these horses with these on, and of course I want to be like, oh great, look at that horse moving. But then I have all of these questions pop up, right? Because we have no research on horses wearing prosthetics. We don't. We have like no research on it. We certainly have no research on it long term. I have never heard of a case of a horse wearing a prosthetic long term that was able to live a happy and healthy life. I have not heard of it. I have also, like, these places, like, they show these horses with their prosthetics on, but they never show the horse 5-10 years from now. They only show it now. So I'm like, did that horse live for a year with a prosthetic on and then like they died? Or did they have an injury? Like did something happen? Like, was there a break? Or is the horse still alive and well? I don't know, because they don't show us that, right? And that's a problem. If I was going to try to make a case for prosthetics, I would have to have more information, right? Like, I would have to be able to say, well, here's this horse that's lived for 10 years with it on and they're happy and healthy. And in my opinion, with these cases of like, this is the vet who like his job is making prosthetics for these horses, I don't think you can take his word for it that these horses are happy and healthy, because is he a vet? Yes. But is his livelihood also reliant on the use of these prosthetics he's creating? Also yes, right? Like, I'm not seeing any other vets who are stepping in and saying, oh, his work is good. I'm not seeing anyone else qualified saying that's always like my stance on it, right? Is like, yes, obviously we want to be able to trust these people, but if their livelihood relies on it or their reputation relies on it, then we can't just take what they say at face value. We have to see other people saying it, and I'm not seeing anyone else supporting his work. So in my opinion, we have no evidence that prosthetics actually work long term. We also have no evidence that they can compensate for the health issues that arise when a horse loses a limb. And here's the other thing is, in my opinion, it's not safe for a horse to live with other horses with a prosthetic on. That's my opinion, and I'll tell you why. Because if you watch horses out in a herd, right, like in a healthy, settled herd, which most herds are not, most domesticated herds of horses are not healthy or settled because there's resource competition and there's management issues and all of that. But even in a healthy herd, right, you do deal with some minimal fighting. You deal with horses playing with each other, horses running around and moving together. A horse in a prosthetic can't do that safely. If they're fighting with another horse, they don't stand a chance. If they're playing with another horse, you run the risk of the horse with the prosthetic coming down wrong and injuring themselves or breaking the prosthetic. You run the risk of another horse knocking or stepping on the prosthetic, breaking it. You break the prosthetic, your horse is going to go down, and then, you know, unless you have someone who watches that herd constantly, is literally at the fence line watching it, you run the risk of your horse being down for hours and nobody knowing. If part of the prosthetic breaks, you run the risk of the horse wearing it, injuring themselves on it, like cutting themselves on it. You run the risk of another horse injuring themselves on it. I have not seen any evidence that horses can lie down and stand back up with the prosthetic on, because like they don't bend the same way. At least I have not seen any that bend, and they physically don't have control over it, so they can't lie down and get up on their own without it, and that's not fair to the horse. Because the other thing is, you also can't just like turn a horse in at night, take their prosthetic off or take them out of their wheelchair, have them lie down and leave them there all night and then come back in the morning, because horses can't be lying down all night. That's another biological difference between them and dogs and cats is horses can't lie down for a long period of time. They're not designed that way. And if a horse is lying down for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours at a time, you are going to start running into health issues. But yeah, in my opinion, it's not safe for a horse with a prosthetic to live out with other horses or even spend time in a herd with other horses, which to me says it's not an option. Okay guys, I wanted to jump in here really quick just to share some information that I found while I was editing this video. I stand by all of my statements on horses living with 3 legs with no prosthesis. I do not think that that's a viable option. But I do need to correct some of the things that I said about prosthetic legs, because I did find some information that contradicts what I said. I found a transcribed interview that was done with 2 vets that specialize in equine amputation and prosthetic limbs. And according to them, there have been some long-term success stories. Of course, I have no proof that their claims are true, but this interview was shared on thehorse.com, which is widely considered to be a fairly reputable source, so I'm inclined to believe that what they are sharing is correct. I've just got my notes here because I want to make sure that I am getting this right and not just throwing random stuff at you. So this article was published in 2006. It's a bit of a while ago. My guess is technology has progressed since then, but I'll just share what they said then. So one of the vets said that his oldest patient had had her prosthetic since 1992. So as of 2006, that would have been 14 years, which I would say is pretty impressive, especially considering the technology that was available in 1992 and 2006. And this horse apparently probably lived, my guess is she's unfortunately probably not around anymore, but she was living outside 24/7, which I wouldn't have thought to be an option, honestly, for a horse with a prosthetic limb. I guess depending on the climate and what like the weather is like there, it would kind of depend on that, because like I could not see a horse being able to live outside 24/7 where I live with a prosthetic, because we get some pretty deep snow. Like last year we had a huge snowstorm. We had like 3 feet of snow on the ground. I don't know how a prosthetic would, stand up to those conditions, but I don't know, maybe somewhere like California, maybe that's possible. He also had another horse that had a prosthesis for 10 years as of this interview. Now again, are these horses truly happy? I don't know. Are they in constant discomfort and pain? I don't know. I'm not sharing this information to be like, oh look, we have a couple success stories, so it's all okay, it's all good, we can keep going with it. That's not what I'm doing. I'm sharing it because I think that it's important to share all available information and to share multiple perspectives of an issue like this, so as to not sway opinions in one way by omitting facts. Do you know what I mean? Because there are certain things where I can definitively say, yes, this is abuse, yes, this is neglect. This is not a subject where I feel like I can be so definitive, because it is something that is constantly evolving, and we just don't have information on it. Now, these 2 vets did both admit that the majority of the horses that they have amputated were not successful cases. One of the vets said that out of the 44 amputations he had performed, only 8 to 10 of them were successful, 2 of which were forelimb amputations, the rest of which were hind limbs. The other vet listed some of his patients, a couple of which did well, others that died, some that lived a few years post-amputation. He didn't really give any definitive numbers. I was actually able to find one study that was on the long-term follow-up of horses with partial limb amputation, which didn't show super favorable results. Some of them did survive a few years, a few were euthanized shortly after the procedure. It wasn't like super in-depth or anything, but it was more promising than I would have expected, but it was not promising enough to the point where I'd be like, oh yeah, this one study is enough proof to show that it's okay. I know that this article that I was, reading from is from 2006, and so I'm sure that technology has advanced since then. We're probably doing a lot better on that front, but I still don't think that we're quite there yet. The recovery process alone for a horse to be able to be fitted with the prosthetic, because you can't just fit it immediately after the surgery, the horses have to be without extra limb support for weeks for the stump to heal properly. I know that that's the word that everyone uses like when it comes to amputation, but like I don't know, I don't like it. But you know, it has to be able to heal. They have to be on stall rest. They can't move very well post-surgery. Like the recovery process alone and the process of getting them ready for the prosthetic is so extensive and likely probably fairly distressing for a lot of horses. So I don't think that right now it's worth it, and I don't feel like I can label it as ethical right now. And I'm sure that that varies case to case, horse to horse. I mean, even the vets that specialize in this, they all admit that not all horses are good candidates for the procedure, but I just don't know if any horses are. I really just don't know. Maybe one day as technology advances, this will become a more viable option. And I know that that will mean that vets do have to keep trying, you know, from now till then. It's how we make advancements in science, right? It's unfortunate, but the only way that we can develop new veterinary surgeries and procedures and medications is by testing them on equines, right? It's the only way we can make that progress, and that's hard to think about, but that's how you do it. So there are a lot of articles out there that talk about individual horses that are amputation success stories, like Molly, the three-legged pony. She's fairly well known, and those are great to see. But again, the people sharing those stories are either the owners or long-term caretakers of those horses. And as much as we want to take what they say at face value, I do not think that we can just blindly accept that what they're saying about their horse being happy is true. It might be. I'm not denying that possibility, but in the absence of clinical data, I don't think that we can take these owners and caretakers' word for it about these cases. I think we can take that into account, but I don't think we can just blindly accept everything that they're saying. They may be interpreting behavioral signs incorrectly, or their judgment may be clouded by their love for their horse. Many animals today are still kept alive past the point that they should be because the owner can't let them go. Even these specialist veterinarians, I think that we have to take into account the fact that their perception may be clouded by their desire for their work to be successful. I'm not saying that they're lying to us about what they're finding. Everything they're finding could be completely true. I'm just saying that I can't take solely their word for it. I need to see other veterinarians with other specialties, equine scientists and behaviorists coming out and supporting their work, especially the behaviorist piece. I need an equine behaviorist to say, yes, this horse is happy and they have a good quality of life, because there are too many equestrians out there that don't know what a happy horse looks like. So after this additional reading, here are my thoughts. A horse cannot live on 3 legs alone. Their body will deteriorate and they will be in pain. A horse may be able to live with a prosthetic, but the success rate is not high enough for me to consider it a widely viable option. It may work for some horses, but it won't work for most, and the process of just getting them ready for the prosthetic and the way that they will live afterwards, the conditions in which they'll live afterwards, may not be a high enough quality of life to deem it ethical. I have no evidence to support that horses can live long-term, happily and healthily with a prosthetic leg. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying I have no data to support that. We've seen some horses that, you know, have lived long-term with a prosthetic, but their health status and their emotional status is not shared. And I do think that emotional and mental piece is something that really should not be overlooked. It should also be noted that amputation and a prosthesis is really not a viable option for most owners because of how expensive it is. The procedure itself can cost from $12,000 to $15,000. The prosthesis can be up to $5,000, and the daily care for the 6 to 8 weeks following the procedure can be upwards of $150 a day. So obviously this is something that's really only going to be available for the top 5% of the equine industry. I do still feel nervous about a horse being turned out with other horses with a prosthetic on, but I have seen that some horses apparently are turned out with other horses. Again, I don't know how that goes. No one's really shared that, if they've had incidents or anything. So it's possible it's safe, and I'll admit I don't know much about the materials that are used for prosthetics, so it really could be okay, but it makes me very nervous. This is also an area that is severely understudied, and I personally would need to see more scientific research data that supports the use of prosthetics long term to be able to actually, personally support their use. But if you were to ask me today, can a horse live a good quality of life with only 3 real legs? I would probably say no. But whatever your takeaway is from today's video, I think it's important that we all remember that apart from those rescues that are using the pain of 3-legged foals to get views, we all just want what's best for our horses, and we may disagree on what the best is, but sometimes that's needed for advancements to happen. I have not seen any horse with 3 legs or with a prosthetic that moves properly, and I don't think that's fair. And I think these rescues and these people that are all keeping these 3-legged horses alive right now, I do not think that they're doing it for the horse. Because they say, oh, well, like, we want to give them a good bit of life before we put them down. You are not doing it for that horse. And I think it is disgusting that you are trying to tell people that that's what you're doing. You are virtue signaling. You are using that horse's pain, that horse's horrible circumstances, as a way for you to get clicks, views, money, donations. That is what you are doing. You are not trying to do that for the horse. If you cared about the horse's well-being, you would have put the horse down months ago. Sorry. Because, you know, you look at a video on TikTok that's talking about this, and you look at the comments, and you'll see people who have the same opinions I do, and then you'll see people who are saying that it's ableist to say that you should put down a horse that has a disability, and that it's disgusting, it's horrible, and you need to give the horse a chance at life. And I understand where some of those people are coming from, okay? I understand having different opinions about it. I understand wanting to give that horse a chance at life. But the reason why you have that opinion is because you don't know very much about horses. This is not me being like, oh, you're stupid. This is just me saying you have that opinion because you don't know much about the biology or the anatomy of horses. And that's okay. If you're not an equestrian, or you're not an equine professional, you don't have a reason to. That's okay. And it's okay. We all have our areas of expertise, right? So it's okay to not know much about horses, but that means that you need to defer to people who do know that information about horses. It really frustrates me when people are trying to make this into a discussion about ableism, because that's not what this is about. It is people who have little to no knowledge about horses and animals that try to make these kinds of decisions. Those are the people that are causing harm to animals. And it really, really frustrates me. These people who have this sense of this ultimate moral high ground because they want everything to live and have a chance. Don't you think that we want everything to be able to live and have a chance too? Don't you think that we want 3-legged horses to be able to live? I would love it if a horse could live happily and healthily long term with 3 legs. It's not like we want to kill horses left, right, and center over here. We just want horses to live with a good quality of life. This is why I hate TikTok. There's too many people giving opinions on things that they're not educated on. And that is very, very frustrating when they act as if they know everything. It is one thing to ask a question, right? To ask a question about something you don't know much about. Say, well, could they live with a prosthetic or a wheelchair? That is fine to ask that question. What's not okay is for you to say, they could live perfectly fine with a prosthetic or a wheelchair. If you don't know. You can't say that if you don't know it for sure. You can ask, but you can't state an opinion as if it's fact when there's nothing to back it up. So yeah. That is what I've got for you guys today. Sorry about the bad lighting. Sorry about the bad audio. Sorry about the bad backgrounds, but it is what it is for today. So hope you either learned something or felt validated in your opinion on something. Sorry if I came off as condescending or rude at points. It's just a topic that really frustrates me. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. And until I see you in the next one, please, 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 please think critically.